evening it's all about the ladies. Not delicate flowers either. These are ladies who dared to step forward and get involved in government, in running our country. And the best place for us to get that perspective is from the Michigan Women's Hall of Fame. We are privileged tonight to have their assistant director, Elly Peterson, here tonight. Emily and I are acquainted through the Michigan Museums Association, where she serves on the board of directors. She has been at the Hall of Fame for 3 years now. She does a variety of jobs there, and will also, so think about this, because we want to have engagement after each talk that we do. So as you listen to her presentation tonight on Women Who Dared, think about if you would like to join us on a spring fling to Lansing, where we could visit the Hall of Fame, tour through the museum, and in springtime go to the Cooley Gardens, which are right next door. So would you please warmly welcome Elly Peterson. Just the arrow key.
Thank you very much. So I do many things at the museum. One of the things I enjoy the most is I get to make the exhibits. I also am the caretaker or manager of the collections, so I also get to work with all of our stuff, which means I get to decide what our exhibits are going to show of our stuff, which is really fun. And I can choose any exhibit I want. Last year was a big election year, and so I chose an exhibit highlighting women that ran in politics. So I'm going to start out by telling you a little bit about our organization. We're celebrating a major milestone. It's our 40th anniversary as the Michigan Women's Studies Association. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, a little tiny bit about the Hall of Fame, and then tell you about this exhibit I created. This is the slide that tells me what I'm about to tell you. So the Michigan Women's Studies Association is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. It was founded on the campus of Michigan State University in the early 70s. It was made by a group of professors that realized there was really nothing being taught about women in curriculum. You might read about a famous queen here or there, maybe a singular female author or something, but on the whole, they just weren't represented, and they wanted to change that. And to sum it up, they wanted to change what was thought and taught about women in Michigan. So they formed the Michigan Women's Studies Association, and then they decided it needed an off-campus branch as well. So they were looking for a place to house a museum, a place to show the evidence of women's history. That's where our historic building enters the picture. We're located in the Cooley Hayes House in downtown Lansing. The building was built in 1903 by E.F. Cooley, the son of Thomas Cooley, our famous Michigan Supreme Court Justice. It then was the home of Harry Hayes, who was the mayor of Lansing and became a legislator himself. And it was actually the governor's residence for Soapy Williams' first term in office. So 1948 was the last time it was a private residence. It then went over to different organizations for office space. But by the late 70s, it had fallen back to the city of Lansing for non-payment of taxes. It looked pretty bad. I need to add a picture to my slideshow of what it looked like at that point. The windows were all boarded up. It looked just pretty wretched. So the city's plan in Lansing, we do this really well, the plan was tear it down, make a parking lot. That's how we treat historic things in Lansing. Our nearest neighbor was Oldsmobile. They could always use a parking lot, right? So the plan was to tear it down. We had an advocate on the city council by the name of Lucille Beelan. She just passed away a couple years ago. And she said, you're not going to do it. You're going to work with these women and you're going to create a partnership. So we leased the building for $1 a year. Fantastic deal. However, we had to raise $250,000 to bring the building back up to code. That took about 7 years to do, so it took some time. It opened June 10th, 1987 to the public. So the picture with the car in front of it, that's probably from about the 1930s, 1940s, one of the earliest pictures we have of the house, and then you can see what it looked like on opening day. That June 10th date is significant too, I should point out. It also is the anniversary of when Michigan ratified the 19th Amendment granting women's suffrage, so we try to do something at the museum around every June 10th. So what are some of the things you'll see if you come visit our museum? Well, we have exhibits. We have 3 different exhibits. Right now we have a small exhibit called Not Just a Man's War, about Michigan women during the Civil War. Made that in honor of the sesquicentennial. Everybody was talking about the soldiers, the leaders, the battles. No one was really talking about the women, and they were there too. So that one is up. We also just opened this past Thursday a brand new exhibit called STEMinist. It's about Michigan women in science, technology, engineering, and math. So this is probably the most cutting edge exhibit, because we don't normally do current things. We usually look historically, but we're trying to encourage the next generation of STEMinists, if you will. We also have an art gallery space where we feature different Michigan women artists. This is the current exhibit by Valeria Davis called My Journey. One of the things I think fascinating about her, she is a ceramicist by training, and she does multimedia works, but she is a clay modeler for Chrysler, so she's one of the people that makes the entire vehicle out of clay, and that fascinates me. And I'd be remiss not to say we have a gift shop. We also have exhibits available to go on the road to different places. But what we're most known for is the Michigan Women's Hall of Fame. This is a little picture, but I'm going to tell you just 2 seconds about it. Some fast facts: the Michigan Women's Hall of Fame, to be inducted in that, it is considered a Lifetime Achievement Award. So for example, we had a very excellent gymnast in the Olympics recently from DeWitt near Lansing, and everybody said, are you going to put her in the Hall of Fame? She's only 16. I think she's got some more to do first. Maybe when she retires from gymnastics, she could be eligible for induction. We have over 260 inductees in the Hall of Fame. It's our this year's our 30th year for the Hall of Fame. And about 2/3 of them are historical, meaning deceased, and about 1/3 are contemporary living. Anyone can be nominated to the Hall of Fame. They must be born in Michigan, lived most of their life in Michigan, or made their significant contribution in Michigan. Who's our oldest member? Marie Therese Goyon Cadillac. I'm terrible at saying her name, forgive me. She was born in 1671. She came with the French colonists to the Detroit area, helped colonize that area, and she was one of, I think, only 2 Caucasian women in the entire settlement for quite some time. She was seen as a civilizing influence and a sign that the French were here to stay. Who's our youngest member? Tricia Saunders. She was born almost 400 years later. She is the most decorated female wrestler in the United States. Kind of unusual. She's from Ann Arbor. She's won 4 world titles in wrestling. The record for male or female was 2, and she has 4. Last year, she was inducted into the International Wrestling Hall of Fame. She was the first women's Olympic coach for women's wrestling. Pretty much, she's known as the grande dame of women's wrestling in the U.S. We have many famous members in the Hall of Fame: Rosa Parks, Helen Milliken, Betty Ford, Linda Tomlin. Lots of names you'll recognize. Counter to many of our famous women, excuse me, I lost my train of thought. We also have a lot of women that you won't necessarily recognize their name. They're either well known in their communities, or they've been sort of quietly working behind the scenes to make a difference. Some of them are known on the national level, the state level, or again, just their own communities. This is our long list of the areas of achievement already represented in the Hall of Fame. This is not exclusive. We add areas when we come across them, but really it's just about anything you can think of. Everything from aviation to suffrage, journalism, arts, pretty much anything you can think of is represented in the Hall of Fame. So now I get to talk about my favorite thing, the exhibits I get to create. One of the things when I was starting this exhibit, it's called Women Who Dared to Lead. I was thinking about the state of women in Michigan politics. It really peaked, the number of the women in the Michigan legislature peaked in the early 2000s, so the beginning of the 21st century, and it's been steadily declining since then. In fact, in 2011, Michigan ranked 36th for the proportion of women in the state legislature, we could do a little better. So I thought, if we created an exhibit looking historically at a lot of the women that sort of were the first and forerunners, perhaps some women would be inspired to run. So the way I've set this up is I'm going to tell stories. That's my favorite thing to do. So I'm going to share some stories about some of the women from the exhibit. I've really not picked a theme to the women I chose. I kind of just chose the ones that I had some good pictures with and had some great stories. So I'm going to share some stories, and I hope you enjoy them. Eva McCall Hamilton was the first woman ever elected to the Michigan legislature. This was right after women's suffrage passed. She served from 1921 to 1922. She only served one term in office, yet it was still a remarkable achievement. She was already politically involved before she was elected to office. She's from Grand Rapids, I should mention that. Luckily, the side says that too. So she was already involved working for women's suffrage. She was a major powerhouse in working for women's suffrage. And a good example of some of the other work she was doing, in 1912, she worked with the city of Grand Rapids on changing their ordinances regarding farmers selling their goods at market. There were city ordinances that said that farmers could not sell directly to customers in the city of Detroit, or in Grand Rapids. Why this existed, I'm not sure. Perhaps the middlemen wanted to get their cut, but she worked to create the first farmers markets. They were concerned at the time about this cost of living in the cities. It was just going up, and so they thought if the farmers could sell directly to the buyers, that would be a good thing, and it would also improve the quality of the foods going there. So she already was working on things like that. In fact, she earned the nickname the Green Onion Lady because it said that she carried green onions with her wherever she went. I'm not sure if this was a selling point or why she was the Green Onion Lady exactly, but she was known as the Green Onion Lady. As a state senator, she worked on behalf of women and children. She argued for the passage of a bill that required applicants for marriage license to show proof that they were free of sexually transmitted diseases. She required this, or she wanted this because she saw it as a form of involuntary suicide, essentially, for young women to be trapped into a marriage if they didn't know that their husband had something like that. Some of the other things that she worked for was a mill tax to give teachers raises, some basic things, but probably her crowning jewel was the Michigan Mothers Pension Act. And this was eliminating funding inequities and increasing money given to impoverished mothers. And the most unique part of this bill, you have to remember this era, what time it was. This is in the beginning of the 1920s. She actually helped to create a law where mothers were given stipends so that they could keep their children at home with them rather than having their children institutionalized because they were poor. So, the first sort of welfare system, I guess, to help keep children at home, in the home. After she left office, again, she only served a short time. She was instrumental in the founding of the League of Women Voters in that area of the state. In 1949, the Michigan Women's Government League wanted to commemorate her service by creating this portrait of her, and it was actually the first portrait of a woman ever hung in the state capitol. It hung in the Senate chamber. And it was the only portrait of a woman hung in the state capitol until Jennifer Granholm's portrait entered in 2011. Little inequity, Elly Peterson, has anybody ever heard of Elly Peterson? She has fantastic stories. So Elly Peterson was a woman of many firsts, I would say. First woman to run for U.S. Senate from Michigan. There's a bumper sticker. She was also the first woman to chair Michigan, a major political party in Michigan, the Republican Party. And she discovered after her experience running for Senate that she preferred organizing. She was probably one of the most powerful organizers, especially of women, you'll ever come across. She helped run many political campaigns, and she was the first female assistant chair of the Republican National Committee. She helped run Gerald Ford's successful presidential campaign. One of my favorite stories about Elly is actually from when she was selected to chair the Michigan Republican Party. She's at the state convention, And everybody's, rallying up there, getting excited for their candidates, and the money man comes over to her. The financial person for the party comes over to her and says, well, Elly, I'm so glad you're chair of the party this year, but we can't pay you what we paid Al. And she kind of pauses, and he tells her, we paid him $21,000 a year. We're only going to pay you $15,000. That's what we're going to pay you. And this was solely based on the fact that she was a woman, so fine. And she is mad. She is really angry, and he's told her this right before she goes on stage. And, the cool cucumber that Elly was, she went up there and she's talking to the audience. And at the time, the Republican Party was actually in some financial straits. They really needed to do some fundraising. And so she's trying to rally the troops, and she tells them, we need you to dig deep in your pockets, and I need everybody to be contributing this year. And you know what? I'm going to start us off. I'm going to donate $6,000 of my own salary to the cause. And nobody ever knew that she wasn't offered the same full salary as her predecessor. Smart lady. One of the other really remarkable things that she was involved with, she was the national co-chair for the ERA America, the Equal Rights Amendment, along with Liz Carpenter, and that was a huge movement. Cora Mae Brown, she was the first African-American female elected senator in Michigan, and what's interesting is she was also the second female senator ever in Michigan. So if you think to Eva McCall Hamilton, who I talked about first, it was a gap of over 30 years until we had our next female senator. She started out as a social worker by training, and she actually became a police officer in the city of Detroit. At the same time, she was attending law school, and she eventually opened her own private practice with a partner. One of the things she worked on in particular when she was in office was she was very concerned with anti-discrimination laws. So there was already a law on the books for hotels and restaurants that fined people $25 and 15 days in jail if they were found discriminating against African Americans. She worked to raise that fine to $100, increased the jail time to 30 days, and included motels for the first time. One of the things that I thought was really unique about her is she was not afraid to upset her own party. And perhaps some of these, no story is new, perhaps, every historical story repeats itself in some way. She was a Democrat, but she shocked her entire party by saying that she was going to run against an incumbent Democrat in her district for House in the U.S. House of Representatives. Of course, the party was not pleased to hear this. And she decided that the incumbent didn't really do enough for the African American community. He himself was Polish, and so she felt he catered more towards the Polish community in her district, and she was not happy about that. And so she ran against him. She did lose in the primaries, but what shocked everybody is she then endorsed a Republican candidate for president, Ike. You can see her little pin here. She's wearing an Ike pin. But she encouraged everybody to vote a straight Democratic ticket otherwise. Really, she said she wanted to support Eisenhower because she felt he did more for civil rights than his opponent did. Lorrain Beebe. Has anybody heard this name? She was I'm not sure why, but I evidently chose a lot of Michigan senators, so I guess that's my theme. She was in the state senate. She was the third woman to run in the state senate, and she's probably known the most for, in the late 60s, abortion legislation was on the bill for discussion. And she was particularly offended not by, the ethics of abortion. It wasn't, whether this should be, shouldn't be, that wasn't her concern. It was the way people were talking about women. They were saying things such as women are not as capable as men, women aren't capable of making major decisions, and being the only woman in this room of 38 having this discussion, I'm sure she felt pretty offended. So she went home that day and planned what she was going to say on the floor the next day because she was going to speak about it. And she had scripted an entire speech. And so when she goes to the floor to give her speech, she's looking around the room and no one is paying attention to her. They're reading the newspaper, some of them are taking a nap, some of them are walking around, chit-chatting with their buddies. And so she stuns everybody by announcing that she herself had had a therapeutic abortion and it had saved her life. You can imagine what this did for her political career. So not only did she make, Michigan news, she made national news. I believe she made international news for making this announcement because it just wasn't something people talked about at the time. That was one of the things that she was most known for. She did try to run for Secretary of State following that, and it was an unsuccessful campaign. I do like this picture. The side of her car says "Vote for Beebe," and she's sort of pulling out her camping materials. She's got her sleeping bag, her lantern. So she was settling in, I guess, for a long, hard campaign. Now, the more humorous story I have about Lorrain Beebe, at the time when she was serving in the Michigan Senate, there was no women's restroom. Kind of anecdotal, but there was no women's restroom. The Capitol really wasn't set up to handle women, I suppose, because, they hadn't been really considered in its construction. And so she requested that one of the restrooms be made a women's restroom. And so some of her peers presented her with a wooden potty, which is what this picture is. It was a gag gift, I'm hoping. She seems to find it funny in the picture. And so, that's just one of the jokes that they pulled on her, is they gave her a little wooden commode to use. Martha Griffiths. I hear every time I pull someone else up, I'm a little, Martha Griffiths was another very strong woman that led the way in Michigan women in politics. She was our first female lieutenant governor. She did many things in politics. She served in the Michigan House of Representatives. She served on the Detroit Recorder's Court. She was in the U.S. House of Representatives. One of the key things she did serving in the U.S. Congress was that she reintroduced the Equal Rights Amendment Act. It had been languishing in committee for over 50 years, and so she reintroduced it to force a vote and ratification. After her 20 years in Congress, she retired from public service and opened a law practice with her husband. And then in 1982, there was a young man by the name of Jim Blanchard who was looking to run for office, and people were really concerned how young he was and how inexperienced. So they decided that what would really make the ticket sellable is if they paired him with an experienced woman from the party. And so they gave the Blanchard Griffith ticket the go, and they won. And a lot of people credit her experience for helping him secure that position. Their relationship kind of changed during the time of her service with him. When he was up for his second term in office, I guess they hadn't discussed formally whether or not she would be running with him. She was in her, I believe, mid-70s at this time. And they really hadn't had that conversation. And so she was in a press meeting, and someone asked her, are you going to be running with him? And she said, I'll leave that door open for him. So essentially, he was sealed into she needed to be his running mate again. And then when he ran for a third term, she respectfully said, I'll let him choose who he's going to run with. And he did change the party ticket to Olivia Maynard, and himself, and they lost. But who did they lose to? Angler and Binsfield. Again, they learned this, pairing a veteran woman from the Republican Party with a younger, sort of upcoming person in the party. So Connie Binsfield helped him win that ticket as well. Oh, here's a picture of Griffiths from her time in the U.S. Congress. This was from when she was announcing that she had reintroduced the Equal Rights Amendment. And the final person I selected was Mary Stallings Coleman. She's our first female Supreme Court justice in Michigan, and also the first female Chief Justice of the court. Interestingly enough, who helped run her campaign? Elly Peterson, that fantastic campaigner. They had about $5,000, and they crisscrossed the state. They went to every county in the state over the course of 2 months for her campaign. One of the things that I thought was really cute that Elly said about Mary was that she was a member of every darn women's club that I'd ever heard of. And that was part of actually what probably helped Coleman win her seat. She was known for her work for women, or children in particular. She reorganized a lot of the Michigan legal system, and she revised state probate and juvenile justice codes. She really was concerned with that. Sort of anecdotal, she had to drive from Battle Creek to Lansing every day, and this was also the time when people had CB radios. And so her nickname on the CB radio was Benchwarmer. Now, I told that to my mom, and she's like, oh, benchwarmer? Why would they call her that? And I was like, no, you don't get it. She's the judge. She's on the bench. So in addition to her legal work, she was also very active with various women's organizations. So we like to sort of do a so what moment for all of our historic exhibits. At the time that I did this exhibit, only 4 out of our 38 state senators were women. So I went and interviewed them because I wanted to know, what is it like to be a woman in this position? What are some of the barriers? What is going on? So there are 4, actually it's changed because I believe some of them have been term limited at this point. But there was Senator Gretchen Whitmer, Judy Emmons, Tanya Shoemaker, and Rebecca Warren that I went to talk to. This is a picture of Rebecca Warren's first bill that she ever introduced being signed into law by Jennifer Granholm, and she brought her daughter and some of her daughter's friends to witness the signing of that bill. So what are some of the things that affect whether or not women are able to run? Well, first off, even looking historically at the women running and asking the contemporary women in office now, all of them said that they had to be asked to run. This was not an idea that sort of came from themselves. Somebody asked them. Interestingly enough, it was usually a man that asked them. Someone would say, well, I think you'd be good at this job. So one of the things that I'm kind of suggesting is that women really do need to be asked to run for office. What I heard from a lot of the women was you have to have a thick skin. You're going to get criticism as any politician would get, but you get an extra dose based on what outfit you're wearing, how your hair looks, how you said something, did you sound too shrill? So you have to have a thick skin. One of the things working against women is term limits. Women that have established themselves in a career are less likely to leave a career that has a good paying salary to go do a proposition that might last only 6 years at the most, especially depending on where they are in their career. Another element is the expense and sort of the ugliness of campaigns. Women are really not always that interested in subjecting themselves to something where they know they're going to be nitpicked apart. And then if you have caregiving responsibilities such as young children, older parents, anything like that, they're less likely to run for office. So I suggest some of you go ask some capable women to run for office. It's probably one of the best things you could do to help us turn around the disproportion of women serving in our state legislature. A tiny side note. Every year we accept nominations for the Michigan Women's Hall of Fame. So I've left my exhibit. I'm back to my museum here. Every year we accept nominations for the Michigan Women's Hall of Fame, and they're due March 21st. So this Thursday, if you think you could write a nomination in a couple days, that'd be awesome. But if not, it is tomorrow. Sorry. This has been that type of week, huh? But we collect them all year long. So I'm sure that all of you know a woman that should be in the Michigan Women's Hall of Fame and is not yet. So I encourage you to check out the nomination process. Is fairly simple, and we have them available online, in person, or if you contact us. And I encourage you to please come visit the museum. It's nice anytime, but it's definitely very nice in spring with the gardens. So I'll take questions if there are any. Born in Michigan, lived most of your life in Michigan, or made their significant contribution in Michigan. That's the basic part.
It also seems as though there's some sort of age
No, I mean, you really just have to think about where someone is in their career. For example, I gave the example of the wrestler. She retired from her career, I want to say, at least by the age of 25. She kind of maxed out. So she was inducted, she's only 40, and she's our youngest inductee. That's because really the bulk of her achievement has been completed. So, someone like an athlete might make it in younger than, a politician or somebody else, something like that. It is a lifetime achievement award, so you just want to sort of look at when their major accomplishments are complete. Yeah.
So this is the point where we talk, because we've kind of shifted away from lectures to talking. You're in downtown Lansing. You're on
Yep.
Malcolm.
Mm-hmm.
What's the intersection?
Between Capitol and Townsend.
Okay. So right in the heart of Lansing,
Mm-hmm.
which is also close to MSU's campus and Veal Gardens, as we think about the weather getting warmer. We have the new exhibit opening.
It's already open.
Mm-hmm. On STEM, so women in science, technology, engineering, and math. I actually met one of the women who was inducted into the Hall of Fame. She worked in engineering and in fuels. She was a scientist.
Schwartz?
Yes.
I can't think of her last name.
Yes. Yes.
I'm gonna have to think about that for a minute. She's 260. It's hard.
We did a Girl Scout program.
Oh.
And she came down and talked about women in science and history. It was wonderful.
I can't think of it.
It's in the last 10 to 12 years.
Oh, that's great.
So anyway, in the same way that we're going down to Pewabic, I toss it out to the group if you would be interested, or if you think you have friends who would be interested in going to Lansing for a day. Obviously, the museum is open in the afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
Wednesday through Saturday. We could make it a weekday trip, or we could make it a Saturday trip. It's always lovely to wrap food into an excursion like that. So my thought would be we head up mid-morning, wrap a lunch into it, visit the museum, see the gardens, and if time permits, we do this by email, talk about even going over to the Veal Gardens at MSU. Anyone think that might interest them in the month of May or June? May? June. Late May. We have to let the flowers get a love out there.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Emily, what kind of stuff is in the museum? I assume a bunch of
Yep.
pictures and portraits and stuff, but what are the kind of stuff?
There are pictures. We have a pretty diverse collection. We focus our collection based on our inductees. So we have everything from a ballot from a 1912 campaign when suffrage was on the ballot. We have one of those original ballots. We have the mining lamp for Annie Clemick's father from up in the UP, the 1913 mine strike. What are some other things? We have some amazing portraiture in our collection. We have all sorts of suffragist material. We have an impressive political button collection. We have garments. We have some of the clothing of Laura Smith Haviland, famous abolitionist from Michigan. All sorts of different sorts of things.
So the stuff is there,
Yes, we do have stuff.
more than pictures.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Sounds
Thank
great.
you so much, Emily.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.